Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I am glad to be joined by David Wasson, Director of Business Development for Simba Chain. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, Yonah. Thanks very much.
Well, David, first to start off, give us our viewers a little background about who you are and how you kind of got into the blockchain.
Right, sure. So I've been in technology for the last 20 plus years, but mostly up and down the West Coast. And the way I got into blockchain was in 2016. I was working for a company that had a technology kind of in traditional trace. It was using serialization to track drugs through the marketplace, prescription drugs. It was all about anti-counterfeiting. But the next logical step from serialization, which is your QR codes, was to move that into to blockchain, because blockchain has just a natural fit for provenance and supply chain and track and trace. So I got involved in that, and that led me to work for a protocol. I worked for Null's Foundation here in San Jose. I did that for almost 2 years, and then I moved on to Simba Chain just the beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm. I've been interviewing a bunch of people for this conference, and it seems like there are a whole lot of blockchains out there. What's so special about Simba Chain?
Yeah, so Simba Chain, it's not a protocol. Just to be straight with that, we don't have our own chain. So what Simba Chain is, it's a platform that assists people to build smart contracts and decentralized applications on a variety of different platforms. We support about 5 different protocols right now, including Ethereum, Quorum, Binance Smart Chain, Hyperledger, and RSK. So we really provide an easy way for you to design a smart contract and build an application without being a coder. So we're really, we're not a chain, if you will.
Yeah, kind of blockchain as a service, which is really interesting. It seems like everything is becoming as a service, and that's the way to go. What limitations though, does that, obviously it comes along with the ease of coding, you don't have to be a blockchain coder. What kind of benefits does that bring to a company as a blockchain service? What does that mean if they're not actually getting a blockchain, they're getting the service? Do I come to you with hey, this is my business problem, and then you guys provide the business solution?
Right, no, that's a great question. So a business, if you look at it from a couple different angles, one, we do a lot of work with business enterprise, also with government, and also in the education space. So we work with higher education. But in the business enterprise, to answer your question, so a business will come to us and they'll say, hey, we're considering putting this business process on the blockchain, or it may be a startup. We work with a lot of startups, especially here in the Bay Area, that want to build a business around blockchain. And what they want to be able to do is build out a proof of concept to see if the application will actually work on blockchain. So what they can do is, without having any coding experience, through basically like a Visio screen is what our platform looks like, you can build the business logic, and you're using assets and transactions and the relationships between those business objects to build out your business process. So whatever the use case is. So it could be a large company like Dow we're working with and Boeing, or it could be some small startups like we're working with here in the Bay Area. They just want to get to a proof of concept quickly, and they don't have the coding talent. But what's beautiful about it, Yonah, is that while you're drawing this visually, your business process out, it's generating Solidity code in the background, which is your smart contract, which will later be used for your application. So it's really, really excellent tool to get to a proof of concept for a new application or a business model.
Is this an automated process? As I'm building my business logic on the front end, this is automatically generating these smart contracts on the back end, or is this more, I'm inputting, my business logic, and then someone from your team is actually, writing a corresponding smart contract?
No, this is, Yonah, this is 100% do-it-yourself. I mean, we do build and assist clients, but this is a do-it-yourself tool. I mean, even if you don't have any coding experience, as long as you understand your business use case and you understand, what the assets and transactions, basically what the nouns and the verbs are around your use case, and you know how to build those relationships just visually, it's completely automated. The code is being generated in the background, and that's the code for your smart contract. And then you basically, the next step is to move to the application, and you essentially insert that code from the smart contract into the application, and you deploy it to a blockchain. It's really just 4 simple steps, and you pick which network you want. If it's Binance Chain, or if it's Hyperledger, or if it's Quorum or Ethereum. So yeah, it's do it yourself. You do it yourself, and it's all generating in the background.
Well, you mentioned some of the chains that you guys support, including Ethereum and Quorum and Stellar and Hyperledger. How did you guys choose which blockchains to start off on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for us, the first thing is that we're set up kind of around Ethereum. So if a blockchain network is using what they call Ethereum virtual machine, EVM, it's pretty easy for us to integrate. So many blockchain platforms use EVM. And EVM is just the thing that makes the network smart. It's what runs the smart contracts. It's the computer on top of the network, essentially. So that's why Ethereum was, of course, our first one because of Ethereum virtual machine. But Quorum is a JP Morgan version of Ethereum, so that was a natural fit. Binance Smart Chain, it's also an EVM, and also Hyperledger is an EVM. So that's kind of how we got onto those chains. I think the only exception to that is we do support Stellar. In fact, we're having a big Stellar event this afternoon, a webinar. But yeah, so that Stellar is really the only one that we support that's not EVM. So how do we select them? We're pretty particular about who we select. It needs to be somewhat mainstream. There's a lot of bleeding edge protocols out there that are great, and they're doing, they're really moving the industry forward. But we're pretty picky or particular about who we select to support. There's other protocols that we're talking to, and there's some fabulous ones out there like Hedera and other ones. So we'll be adding more, but we stay agnostic when it comes to the blockchain platforms.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, you mentioned that all of them are using EVM except Stellar, and you guys even launched a payment app recently for use on Stellar. What was the reasoning behind choosing to work with Stellar specifically as the first non-EVM blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, Stellar is just really fantastic for financial transactions, and it's very simple to use. It's I think there's 12 or 13 different transactions that you can create, like withdraw, escrow, deposit, different financial transactions. And Stellar, they've been around a while. They have created some adoption for their network. It's actually Stellar is. It's almost like Bitcoin, but it's not. It's more for apps. So it's a really good financial network for us to use, and we have a lot of popularity, a lot of demand for building apps on Stellar. So yeah, it's a really good platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these are apps these are dApps, decentralized apps, which is and that's kind of been since the beginning of blockchain. There's kind of been this mystical talk of the killer dApp, of the dApp that's going to drive mass adoption and kind of do the work of marketing for us and do the onboarding for us. Have we seen that dApp yet? And if not, why is it taking so damn long? Or is it not taking long because this is a very, very new technology? Where do we stand in terms of the evolution of dApps?
Yeah, that's a really big question. So I think the challenges for adoption have been, it's what blockchain's been around for almost 11 years now. And I think really it's been a really well kept secret with developers. It's been a developer driven, highly tech solution. And now I think we're at the point in adoption where you're seeing anybody using it. I mean, for instance, Simba Chain, and there's others like Simba Chain, but Simba Chain's being used for undergrad education at Portland State University is one. They're teaching students that are 19, 20-year-old students, first-year business degrees, that they have no desire to code and have never coded, but they're able to create a smart contract and to deploy an app. Now that 3 years ago, that couldn't have happened. I mean, you had to be a coder, you had to understand Java or Solidity. So today that adoption is being created. And so I think the adoption it's been that barrier of entry and knowledge of coding that has kind of stopped it. But I can say this, in terms of apps, that killer app, well, you see DeFi, especially, there's a lot of killer apps in DeFi these days. But just Simba Chain alone, if this is any kind of barometer, I mean, we just crossed this week 3,000 users using our platform to build apps, and they've created over 1,200 apps, decentralized applications on those different blockchains that I mentioned. So is it gaining mass adoption? I think so. I mean, you see, we're working with companies like Dow and Boeing, Caterpillar. Those are pretty mainstream companies that are building applications or at least experimenting with it. But the killer app, it'll come. But I think it's close. I think adoption, we're really at the point where adoption is about to just really explode.
And some might argue we're at the point where there's too much adoption, especially on the Ethereum blockchain. There's high network congestion, and with that, high network fees, slow transaction times. Is that a fear for you guys? You guys are blockchain as a service and a startup as a service also, and you guys are offering this for mostly Ethereum-based blockchains. Is there a fear that due to this the inability to scale so far by Ethereum, this will drive people away from Ethereum, away from developing on Ethereum and towards other blockchains?
Yeah, so that's definitely a legitimate concern, especially the gas fees, especially recently. But one of the things that we do on our platform is we have a simple platform that you can design your blockchain use case around, but we also offer what we call off-chain. So just simply by clicking a button, you can store information off-chain, things that you don't need on-chain. You can store on, interplanetary file system. You can store it on Microsoft Blob. You can store it on Get. There's that kind of non-critical off-chain data. By putting that by hashing that into your blockchain, into your actual code, you're just referencing that information, which really increases the speed and reduces latency. But yeah, I think Ethereum, that's kind of a good thing too. It's a double-edged sword. The fact that Ethereum is so busy means there's a lot of activity in blockchain, a lot of people looking into it. And then of course, we're also going to be supporting, Ethereum 2.0 and their proof of stake, consensus mechanism. So that might be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. And I've been covering the space for a while, and they have been promising Ethereum 2.0 for a long time. Proof of stake sharding, and I'm excited to see it because I'm sick of talking about it, and I want to actually see it already, as I'm sure you are as well. Now, Simba Chain, I believe that the corporation was formed in 2017 from a grant awarded by DARPA, which is the advanced research arm for the U.S. military, in order to develop a secure, unhackable messaging and transaction platform for the military.
Right.
Is that still a big client for Simba Chain? Is the U.S. military still active in the blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. And we received that DARPA grant in 2017. And actually, the DARPA grant was given to University of Notre Dame and to a manufacturing company called Atamco. And Atamco is, they manufacture small precision parts, mostly for the Department of Defense, like precision gears and that type of thing. But the grant was given to University of Notre Dame. So our founders, one is Dr. Taylor. He's from the Computer Center of Excellence at University of Notre Dame. He's our CTO. And our CEO, his name is Joel Nideg. He's from Atamco. And they created this secure messaging system using blockchain encryption, military-grade encryption, to send these specifications out to forward deployed troops. And it could be at a naval air base, or it could be on an aircraft carrier. And then those parts were 3D printed in the field, which is really, when you think about it, kind of amazing. You could, have an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Red Sea, and you're printing a 3D part for a rotor blade on a jet. So it was really impressive. It was highly successful. Base Camp is what it was called. But yeah, since then we've had additional contracts with DoD, the Navy, the Air Force, and also the Department of Energy. But right now what we're growing is we're trying to grow the business enterprise piece. So that's why we are working with Boeing and Dow's and Caterpillars, and a whole bunch of universities right now are adopting it because it's so easy to use. It's really easy to use as a teaching tool.
When you look at emerging technologies, especially the internet, but you could kind of see it across the board, but especially the internet, these technologies and very complex technologies usually get their start and their push from military applications, and then go on from that, filter down to enterprise use, and then eventually to the consumer use. Do you see that also happening here with the blockchain, where a lot of what we see as consumers, a lot of the innovation that's happening in the space as consumers, obviously we see these DeFi products and mostly speculative tokens. But is there actually a lot of innovation that the average blockchain or crypto lover doesn't realize is actually going on in the blockchain space because it's happening for military grade blockchains?
Yeah, I think probably so, Yonah, because even myself, I started working with Simba in the beginning of 2020, and I had no idea. There's many projects that the government is soliciting. Some are even things like, remote voting for Congress. Some are around contact tracing. Even I just saw yesterday that International Monetary Fund is promoting cryptocurrency. So these government agencies and organizations are doing a lot with blockchain, and it can't be ignored anymore because it is becoming mainstream. And maybe there's not that killer app like the Uber of blockchain yet, but there's plenty. It's drawing plenty of attention. Blockchain with responsible use cases. And I think Simba Chain's a little bit conservative side. Our roots are from academia, which is University of Notre Dame, and also the government and manufacturing. So we're a little bit unusual than most blockchain companies in that, like, we have a top secret military clearance, which I don't know that there's any blockchain company that does that. Yeah, we're pretty conservative and pretty unique in the blockchain space.
David, that's really cool, interesting. You don't really think about blockchain, at least as the end consumer. You don't really think about blockchain, in that way. When we're hearing about the blockchain innovations and advancements, I'm thinking DeFi. But that is cool to know that there are projects working with military, especially locally in the country as well. Now, one of the things I liked is when I went to prep for this interview, I went to your website, and you guys had a 4-question quiz to check whether your business needs a blockchain. And it was a very cute quiz, 4 simple questions, yes, no, do you need a blockchain? What I really liked was that if your answer was no for any of those questions, it recommended you say, hey, maybe blockchain isn't the correct use case for you. And I find that very refreshing in this space. Because it seems like, especially as through the blockchain buzz, it seemed like companies were just throwing blockchain onto their name or onto their business, just kind of as a buzzword. So kudos to you guys for really trying to actually find use cases and an actual solution for the blockchain to you guys. So definitely kudos to you. Now we spoke about blockchain as a service. And kind of, I guess, tied into that is smart contract as a service, right? Does that fall under the same umbrella?
Yeah, it's smart contract as a service, and essentially what it is, you use what we call smart contract designer. That's what we've been talking about this easy tool to design and build a smart contract and then deploy it on an application onto the blockchain. That's the tool that gets you to a smart contract and to the app. But then, the smart contract as a service comes in. You can scale up that once you've created that smart contract in the app, if it's successful and it proves out in the proof of concept that it's workable, you can scale that up. We're partnered with Microsoft Azure. So you can scale it up. We call it smart contract as a service. It's available on Microsoft App Source, and we're also available in Power Apps. So if you're more of a developer, it's a little bit more advanced. Than just building the smart contract using it visually. If you're more of a coder, you can scale it up to full-scale production. So smart contract is a service. It's a monthly subscription, just like your LinkedIn subscription, and it's providing you, access to all those APIs that you might need from an enterprise to interconnect with your ERP systems and the other front-end office systems that you have. So it makes it fully enterprise. But that's a smart contract as a service, yeah. And that's actually got some more development coming. There's going to be some announcements being made about that in the near term. So yeah, we're excited about that.
Oh, very excited to hear what pops out of that. That sounds very cool. Now you mentioned a couple of big companies you guys work with, including Boeing. When these big companies come to you, they have right now there are a bunch of enterprise blockchain or enterprise focused blockchains out there. And so why would a big company like Boeing, why would they choose Simba Chain, over going directly and developing directly onto, Hyperledger or Quorum or one of these other ones?
Right. Yeah. And Boeing's an example. Dow would be another example. Like Dow came to us. They have I'll just talk about Dow for a minute because I'm not all that familiar with the Boeing project.
Okay.
Someone else is responsible for that. But the Dow project, which is another big company, they came to us because they have a very robust supply chain. So they came to us. They want to, look at putting a part of that value chain onto the blockchain. So they don't have expertise. Their IT group does not have expertise in blockchain, but they do understand their business process better than anybody else, much better than we do. So they came to us, and they're using our smart contract designer tool because they can, code without coding. They can build out their business model, and it's generating the code in the background. So that's why they come to us. maybe some of these companies never ever have any desire to have, blockchain engineers on their bench, and they want to have their business analysts be able to build out the blockchain, protocols, and then be able to launch that code. At some point, you have to have somebody look at the code, for security points of view and quality points of view. But the bigger companies come to us for that, and it's the very same reason for the small startups. They come to us because they can't afford to have, blockchain designers and engineers sitting on their bench. So they have business analysts and people that understand the business, and they can build it out, a proof of concept, really quickly. So I think that's what's driving it, is just the lack of the talent and the resource, and the lack of desire to invest in that type of resource.
Mm-hmm. And that probably gives you guys, some incredible insight into the blockchain innovation and what direction blockchain is heading, because you guys do have, these companies from all walks of life, and probably usually not so focused, their core business probably isn't built off blockchain. Their core business is something, and they think the blockchain could help it. So you're probably getting to see a lot of interesting smart contract ideas and interesting use cases being designed on the Simba chain. So my question is two parts, actually. One, what is the most common type of use case you guys are seeing developed on the Simba chain? And
Right.
Two, what's the most surprising one that you have seen developed on the Simba chain?
Yeah, so there's some great use cases, and I see, half a dozen use cases every day, and a lot of people experimenting with different ideas, both big companies and small companies experimenting with different ideas. The most common, obviously it's supply chain. I mean, supply chain and track and trace and provenance, because that's just such a natural fit, because you're basically tracking assets and transactions and chain of custody. So lots of things happening in the supply chain space. But in addition to that is decentralized identification, DID they call it. That's becoming much more mainstream as well. A lot of companies looking into that to be able to, guarantee your information, your own sovereignty, and through that decentralized identification. And also with that comes credentialing. We're seeing a lot of things happening in authentication. We're working with one client right now, I can't say who, but because of a lot of things happening in social media these days, they want to protect themselves against deep fakes. When they're releasing news, they don't want it to be, copied and deep faked. So we're using blockchain to create an authentication of that media, so that if someone comes and says, "Hey, look at this," and they'll say, "No, this is our original media," and it's protected by the blockchain. So that's really unique and something new. And actually with this COVID, we're seeing other use cases too, like, streaming is becoming very popular, at-home entertainment. So we're doing some work with a company that is, we're providing unique identifiers for tickets that they buy to attend watch parties for actually live performances on Broadway. So there's a lot of innovative things happening. And it's amazing how the blockchain industry has really responded to all the circumstances that have happened recently, both, the social unrest and also the COVID. So it's really amazing how we've all, gotten together and teamed up and responded to that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, this is for many of us, definitely for me, but for I would say everyone, this is a once in a lifetime event, this global pandemic that's really changing the way that we work, the way we live, the way we shop, the way we interact. So, how have you seen, blockchain kind of step up into that role now? Like we mentioned, one of the biggest use cases, especially at enterprise level for blockchain, has been supply chain. And we've seen the global supply chain really put to the test, especially early on during Corona, where countries were fighting over medical supplies and trying to get ventilators and things like that. Do you think that blockchain has the potential there, or has even already, to really streamline that supply process, and especially now as especially as work from home, and you mentioned the need for authentication and validation, very crucial when it comes to medical supplies as well. How have you seen the blockchain step up to this global crisis on all fronts?
I think, well, to your supply chain question in response to COVID-19, I think, those, the protective equipment, that all needs to be, authenticated. There's a lot, we hear stories all the time about, counterfeit, medical protective equipment that's out there. So verifying it, I've heard some use cases where they're using IoT combined with blockchain to track and surveil those supply chains. But the one that I've been most recently involved with was around contact tracing, which actually kind of, when you think about it, really is supply chain. And contact tracing is, where you're making sure that people that are tested positive, you find out who they've been around so that you can notify them. And we're trying to do that electronically. We've teamed up with, Notre Dame and Microsoft and a company called Prism. And Prism is really big in social economics, behavioral economics. And we're combining that behavioral economics with technology and blockchain. But we're also adding a different twist to it because, we have these bracelets. Why do you want to wear? You need to have an incentive to wear a bracelet that's going to notify you that if you're near someone who's, tested positive, why would you wear this? So we're actually adding a tokenization element to it where you'll have an incentive to actually wear this bracelet that will be used for contact tracing. So you'll earn these tokens that are redeemable for different things. So different.
Cool. Has that launched yet?
No, it's in development right now, but there's actually both private and public sector clients that are interested in that. So.
Oh, very cool. I mean, that like you mentioned, that does seem like a really good use case for the blockchain. We have many parties who can't really trust each other. That does seem like a blockchain 101 right there. Now, before, you mentioned before how Simba got its start and the universities and how you guys still do education. It's really tough right now because blockchain is so early on and it's innovating at such a fast pace. I mean, 3 years ago, there were whispers of DeFi, and now DeFi is through the roof. And if you would have told someone 3 years ago that ICOs would be gone, they wouldn't believe you. I mean, the peaks and the falls happen so quickly, and the innovation is happening so quickly. So someone who's studying blockchain, I mean, especially at a university level in a formal setting, does it even make sense to study this in a formal setting when, by the time you're done, the curriculum you just learned could have been outdated already by a year?
Wow, that's really a great question because that's actually one of the issues. I talk to universities every day and I talk to professors and instructors every day, and they have several concerns, and that's one of them, that they plan this curriculum out. By the time they implement the curriculum, the shelf life has expired. So, but one of the ways that we've worked with universities on that is that our platform, which is used to develop these apps, is platform agnostic. So we keep up with the different protocols. So even if the protocol makes a change, if you're using Simba Chain, by the time you implement the curriculum, we've already caught up to that. But in a university setting, it needs to be taught formally. And a lot of the other pushback we get from universities is, why would we teach that? I'm afraid to bring it to my administrator to offer that course because there's Bitcoin media investment hype, there's Silk Road, there's all these things. But that's part of the story. It can't be ignored. It needs to be part of the education process, but then also assuring that you're using a curriculum based on real world experience. And also, honestly, apps, blockchain is so abstract to understand. It's really hard to learn blockchain by reading about it or listening to lectures about it. The best way to do it is to do it. And that's this high touch learning experience, which creates tacit knowledge, which is knowledge by doing, is the best way to learn blockchain. Look, hey, I've been talking about blockchain since 2016. I didn't really understand blockchain until I built my own smart contract. And I have no coding experience. My background is economics and business. It's the best way to learn. It really is.
Right. And I mean, and definitely connected to that, when you're talking with these universities and these professors, are they teaching it as part of a computer science curriculum? Is it its own specific track, or is it even considered maybe? I mean, I always consider it in my mind as more cybersecurity. It seems like a security protocol, a secure system. I mean, is there a blockchain degrees? Will there be blockchain degrees, or will it merely be a course to take within computer science?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for blockchain and education. So, I think Coinbase did a study in 2019 that showed the different departments that blockchain is being taught, where there's certificates being earned, or where there's actually just programs, elective programs. And so almost 70% of those curriculums are being taught outside the computer science school. So they're being taught in law, it's being taught in finance, economics, business management, and humanities, like even philosophy and entrepreneurship. And it's amazing how it's really, it's reached way outside of computer science. And it's fundamentally, it's going to affect all those different businesses. So it's not just a financial use case. It's like we've been talking about, supply chain and other use cases.
I mean, you said your background's in finance and economics, and so I want to pick your brain a little bit here because DeFi is really, really popular right now, and I think it's really fascinating and powerful tools there where for the first time, just anyone with an internet access has access to these really incredible and complex trading tools. So, when it comes to universities, do you think that, the financial degrees and economic degrees should be teaching about about not necessarily specific DeFi products, but about the idea of DeFi? Hey, this is the technology that's out there, and this could really be used, in extremely powerful ways. It's no longer, hey, you graduate from business school and go work for Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs. You don't have to go that route, but rather it opens the door to everyone, essentially.
Yeah, I think what I've seen in terms of the finance departments, what they've been teaching, and also in economics, but in finance in particular, is they teach a lot. Well, first, everybody kind of starts at the same place when you're learning about blockchain. You have to go through all those basics like wallets and explorers and that. But for finance, when you start getting into the details of finance and that discipline, a lot of it's around tokenomics. It's around, how does a token accelerate, a product? How does it provide incentives? How does it provide security around a network? And I think that the tokenomics piece is probably, if you talk about DeFi, like how do you create a total supply for a project? What do you base that on? What do you base a maximum supply of tokens on? So that whole tokenomic aspect is really important. That's being taught in schools now in the finance departments. And yeah, they're certainly looking at DeFi. DeFi's caught on like crazy, especially just recently. But it even has its own limitations. I mean, it's really, it started out as borrowing and lending, and that's pretty much what it's been based on. And a lot of that's been using to hedge and to borrow money to make larger transactions, which is kind of good, but it can also be a little bit dangerous. So I think in the university settings, what I'm seeing in finance is mostly around tokenomics.
Mm-hmm. And we've already mentioned Simba Chain's connection with governments, and we've been talking about all this exciting new technologies, new innovations, new abilities. Have you sensed, or in your dealings with them, is there a fear at all on their part that this technology could be used potentially by bad actors for malicious intent?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you even look at what the International Monetary Fund just put a video out yesterday about cryptocurrencies, which is amazing that they're talking about cryptocurrency in the IMF, but there's certainly this, incognito, this privacy, this, malicious bad behavior, but look at it from the dollar point of view. I mean, the dollar is used for more malicious and more criminal activity than Bitcoin's ever been used for, or probably ever will be used for. So, it's kind of an argument for the sake of the argument,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, this might be outside your range, but do you foresee a CBDC or a U.S. CBDC anytime soon?
You mean an electronic
central bank
currency?
Yeah, like an electronic dollar. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they have to. I mean, they absolutely have to, and it's not going to be called cryptocurrency. It's going to be a version of a cryptocurrency. It's going to have some of the inherent benefits of it, but it's going to be pegged to a dollar, which is, that's the centralization piece that doesn't work, I don't think. But yeah, there will be. They have to, for remittance and international, movement of money. They absolutely have to. China's done it. Many other countries are doing it, and it's time that U.S. has to step up and do it. Absolutely.
Now, touching upon, one of the other use cases I actually saw on the Simba Chain website was actually combining the Simba Chain and now integrated with Unity 3D to combine gaming and blockchain. What's happening over there?
Right, that's pretty new. That's a pretty new feature, and we are, Unity is probably the premier development platform for 3D, and we're actively trying to develop that market. So that was our first step, was partnering up with Unity, and we're out there talking to some of the rather large gaming companies right now about how they can use Simba Chain to kind of speed up that process of getting games to market. So I don't have any clients that I can name right now, but yes, we're moving into that space.
Well, you don't have to mention any names, but could you mention potential use cases for how blockchain might help a gaming company?
Yeah, I think it's really about speed to market, and also a factor of resources, and being able to put a large number of you have gamers that really understand what a game looks like and the kind of economics behind it, the behavior behind it, but they don't necessarily have the coding. They don't have the coding experience. So what Simba Chain does is it kind of alleviates that that barrier of entry, so they can bring games. It's kind of like the business analyst versus the developer. This is the gamer versus the developer, and it's they can bring these games to market faster. And then you have all the Unity tools right at your hand. So we're integrated with Unity. So I think that's the biggest use case, is just getting games to market faster.
Mm-hmm. Well, more games the better. I mean, I'm a big gamer, and so I'm excited what comes from that. And last question before I let you go, it seems like Simba Chain really does have enables kind of the everyday person, anyone with the hey, I want to try out blockchain, I want to see if this works, and I don't want to have to go and learn how to develop on blockchain. And so that's really an incredible use case. I've been talking to a bunch of projects recently, and this is one of the more unique blockchain products that I've actually seen. But what is next for Simba Chain? Is it to continue to make it easier and give newbies more powerful tools on how to develop on the blockchain, or is there another direction?
Yeah, I think we'll continue with Smart Contract Designer and making that even easier to use and maybe a bit more robust. It has some limitations right now, but I think we'll make it more robust going forward. And I think we may also add an element where it takes it even beyond our application. Our platform comes with a user interface, so it's got a built-in user interface. It's pretty basic, but I think at some point maybe we'll have a better user interface for applications once they've been developed. So we'll spend time on that. But what's really exciting is we're spending time with our smart contract as a service, and that's going to be announced pretty soon. That it's going to have some pretty incredible query and block explorer. It's really going to, and we're going to continue expanding with our Microsoft Power Apps and Microsoft Azure. So I think those things, more on the SCAS side, what we call smart contract as a service, that's really going to be, we're going to be spending a lot of development time there.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys come up with next. David, thank you so much for joining me here. And for all our viewers at home, for Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.